Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella Herrera. Hi, Maricella. How are you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
I am doing excellent. I'm doing really well. And I'm excited for today's guest, Yvette Torres-Rahman, who is the co-founder and CFO of Business Fights Poverty. It's an organization very much aligned with B Corps and B Corp values, which includes Ellevate, looking to create change and impact through businesses who lead with their values and want to use business as a force for good. She's doing amazing work, and it was just a fantastic conversation.
I'm really looking forward to hear your conversation. You know, I was thinking about this, both the B Corp thing, about like how companies have changed and how it's important for consumers to understand what companies stand for now. So next year is my 10-year reunion from business school.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. It's weird. But I've been thinking about it because back when I was in business school, like most of my friends went into banking, consulting, the usual stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I was the weird person who came to Ellevate and do-gooder, and I'm going to change the world.
Wait, so that means you've been at Ellevate for 10 years?
Next year will be 10 years.
Oh, my goodness. We are going to have a massive party.
I know. But I've been seeing more and more of my friends change into social enterprises or nonprofits or something that has a mission. And, you know, I mean, these are highly educated, really smart people who are making a lot of money. But it's something about, I don't know if it's the last year more so than anything that we've had, where the pandemic, the situation around racial justice, and what we're seeing in the world has really opened everyone's eyes to like, just money is not enough.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been a very quick acceleration of this conversation over the past year, but we've been going in this direction. I mean, the Business Roundtable and, you know, seeing more and more of companies kind of leading with values, talking about social impact, talking about living wage and many of the other issues that are central to their workforce, to their customers, and increasingly, I think, to other stakeholders as well.
Yeah, it's exciting to see it. I mean, like you said, we've been seeing it for a while, but it's exciting to see it accelerate.
Yeah,
and
be much more top of mind. I mean,
exactly.
You know, the past year has, I think, centered us to our values and to what's important. And, you know, I think we'll see an even greater shift moving forward of those who, you know, really want to live their purpose every day.
And speaking about that, Mobilize Women Week is coming up in just a few weeks. If you're not familiar with Mobilize Women, it is the kind of heart of our mission. It started off being an annual summit that we were hosting in New York 5 years ago and live streamed. With the pandemic last year, we changed it to a week-long experience where each day we have, you know, a big featured series of speakers. This year, June 21st to the 25th, we will be hosting Mobilize Women Week. It is all about what we were just talking about, right? Mm-hmm. Like, how can businesses create change? How can you as an individual take action to make a more just and equitable world around you? And we have great topics, great speakers, but most of all, we have a great community of amazing women who care about these things, who want to discuss and share their voice and their opinions and kind of crowdsource solutions for how do we even take this world that is not that great and make it really great. So check it out on the Ellevate website, Mobilize Women Week, June 21st to the 25th. All the main stage feature sessions are free. We have topics like power dynamics and equity, and how do we keep people in power, not just politically, but also in companies and in leadership, accountable. Dismantling social constructs. How do we stop agreeing that things have to be the way they are?
Yep.
Creating a racially reconciled future. So talking a little bit about the social justice movement, Black Lives Matter, Stop AAPI Hate, and all these things, and much more, and what's coming post-pandemic for us. So really, really looking forward to it and hope you can join us.
Yes, join us for Mobilize Women Week 2021. This episode is sponsored by the Cornell S.C. Johnson College of Business. The Cornell Executive MBA Americas program is designed for goal achievers from any industry. Advance your career without interruption, gain global business and leadership perspective, and broaden your professional network as you connect both virtually and in person with faculty and classmates. Achieve your goals with the Cornell Executive MBA Americas program, on the weekend and in a city near you. Search Cornell eMBA Americas in my city today. Now to my conversation with Yvette. Hello, Yvette. Welcome to the Ellevate podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be with you.
We are excited to have you here and excited to learn a little bit more about you and your story. Would you mind sharing with our listeners today?
Well, my story probably started way back when I left university and wanted to spend time with my husband, who at the time, well, not husband yet, I met him 30 years ago. He was in Guyana, South America, basically focusing on international development. And I joined him to do marketing. And from there, I always had a passion to think, how can I apply these business skills, which I then went on to develop at GlaxoSmithKline and other companies. How can I really harness those in, for good? And my husband on his side, he found that he wanted to, bring that international development angle into the business world. So, it just happened that a few years down the line, we had the opportunity to start our own business, and hence Business Fights Poverty was born.
And tell me more about Business Fights Poverty. Why did you create it, and what is the mission of the organization?
We created it because actually we found that there was a community of people. Well, at the time there wasn't a community, but people out there who were in many different walks of life, either working for charities or government or business, and they all shared a philosophy, which is we feel business can be a force for good, and we want to work with business to harness and scale, what business can do. But often you'd find that these people were isolated in their own organizations. Maybe in a charity, people were a bit anti-business, or in a business, other people were more about profit and didn't quite understand purpose, and government was skeptical. But so these people felt isolated in their organizations. And we kind of built Business Fights Poverty to bring those people together, to feel like they belong to a tribe that together could achieve more than separately.
And so Business Fights Poverty is it a coalition of businesses with that shared purpose of having a better impact on our world, and that's kind of the central magic?
So we started off as a community of individuals coming together around these topics. And we also had another network running at the time, which was Business Action for Africa. And that was more from the corporate world, very much focusing on Africa, how business is good for Africa, Africa is good for business. And what we found was that as that organization grew and wanted to be more global, it actually made sense for these two communities to come together. So where we are now is we have 30,000 individuals who are part of this. We have a group of over 20 corporate organizations who sit at the center and, in a sense, help us find the direction and the priorities. And then we have over 100 content partners, which by and large are NGOs and think tanks and universities who contribute their know-how to the community.
And with the community, who are some of the companies that are represented?
Well, we have, I think, some brand names that you will recognize. We have Mars, we have AB InBev, we have Unilever, Pearson. It's kind of from a range of sectors. We have banks like Barclays, Standard Chartered. We actually find that competitors are quite happy to work together on issues because it's for the greater good.
And currently, what are some of the key areas that the group is focused on?
Well, there's two projects that are live at the moment. There's the one that's the most urgent is we're coordinating a rapid response facility to help with the crisis in India. You've probably heard on the news how dire the situation is at the moment. There's thousands of people dying every day. The health system is under a lot of pressure. There's shortage of oxygen, medicines. So what we're doing there is bringing together people with different resources to actually help people on the ground deliver those much needed supplies. So to give you an example, we've got companies who have last mile distribution within India who've said, look, we'll pick things up, medicines, whatever you need at the airport and distribute them right in those villages. We've got other companies who have supplies that are donating those, others who have funds and want to help. And we've got NGOs on the ground who are actually telling us exactly what is needed. So that's an example of a collaboration that's happening right now. And in fact, we have a specific web page, which if later on you can add any links, I can give that for anybody who wants to help out on that effort.
No, yeah, what is it?
So in terms of helping out, we've got a whole load of links where people, individuals can donate their time. If they have specific networks, they can tell us, we can contact them and sort of bring them in to the collaboration.
So you mentioned you have two projects you're working on. What's the other one?
Yeah, so the other one is actually based in the US, and it's all about looking at how can we create an environment where social impact businesses can thrive. And what we've been looking at is in specifically Black and other leaders of colour who are playing a role in kind of lifting their communities out of poverty, but they're struggling. You'll find that despite 20% of Black Americans being engaged in like early stage business, only about 1% are actually getting loans to help grow their business. And only about 4% of those businesses are surviving more than 3 years. So really what we're looking at, we're interviewing a whole load of entrepreneurs, seeing what can be done to help them. And there's this particular entrepreneur that comes to mind. He's called Colin Seal. And he created something called Think Law, which helps students develop their critical thinking and how they can, and their conflict resolution skills. And it's a great initiative, but he really struggled in the early days. And it wasn't actually until he got awarded some funding through the 2020 Barclays and Equine Green, I think it's called the Innovation Challenge, that he was actually able to scale this business. And I think it's, not everybody has his luck or his fundraising skills. So, what's going wrong? And what we found is that it's actually the investment landscape that is at fault here. And well, we're actually going to be publishing the report very soon. So I can give you some of the highlights now, or we can direct people to it. Up to you.
Give us some of the highlights. We would love to hear them.
Well, we've really found that there's 4 things that the investment community could do to help these Black entrepreneurs and leaders of colour. It's really, they have to accelerate the diversity of the people, the thoughts, the experiences that they actually are interacting with day to day, and with those social entrepreneurs. And we've got to really build some mutual understanding between business owners and investors. And also we need to acknowledge the huge pressures that people are under and reduce some of the bureaucratic pressures and burdens that people are facing in their social entrepreneurship businesses. And I think a final point that we found is that investors really need to value profit as much as the purpose of that business. And well, in a sense, the purpose of the business is equally as important as the profit they can generate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm curious because so I personally, I know you're a B Corp, we're a B Corp. We believe very much in business as a force for good, and we've certainly seen over the past 2 years, I would say, through the work that you're doing, through the Business Roundtable, this increased conversation or a conversation that's becoming louder around how businesses can do more, do better, really realign their values in looking at business as a force for good. But there's definitely skepticism around that. Is it just posturing? Do businesses really mean it? And if they do, how do they make that shift towards really impacting communities in need, impacting their employees, impacting their business, and getting stakeholders involved in that? And so I guess the question for you is, can you share some anecdotes or stories about how you're really seeing those in your community, not just paying lip service to why this is important, but taking action? You mentioned Barclays earlier in the story, but what are the ways in which companies are really showing up and putting kind of their impact where their mouth is, if you will?
Yes, I think different companies are at different stages of that journey. In fact, back in 2019, when we could still have in-person events, we had an event at Oxford University at Said Business School all about embedding purpose. So in other words, how do you make sure that this is not just lip service, that you're serious about it? And I think what companies and individuals within those companies struggle with is that you can be doing something great over here in this part of the company, whilst another part of the company is maybe not behaving in the same way. So embedding that purpose, making sure that everybody is aligned, it is so important. And I know that Unilever, for example, they really do. Their staff, we will speak with people from across the business, and they're all very much aligned in terms of harnessing their business and their brands to do good. And it goes through every department. And I think, that is not an easy task. It's probably taken them many, many years to align everybody. But it does mean that when they do a project, like recently, they've set themselves a goal to help with hand hygiene of 1 billion people around the world. Now, if you think about what that means in terms of COVID, many more people, particularly in developing countries, having that hand hygiene will slow down the spread of the pandemic. So, and they have done that not just on their own, but they have done it by engaging with stakeholders on the ground, with government. They have brought in other people to help them deliver that. And I think that's one of the key things, collaboration. If you open up and you're willing to speak to others and engage with others in the delivery of your mission, it becomes more transparent. You demonstrate that you're being genuine. You're not hiding and just putting out a report. You're actually inviting people to go along with you on that journey.
Well, and it sounds that you are playing a central role around, being sort of that hub, making the connections within your community. You're talking about this rapid response in India. What are some of the key takeaways, which, how do you get a massive organization like Unilever to, move quickly, to, impact communities, to work with partners? It feels to me so overwhelming and daunting, and yet we're seeing it happen. What's the secret sauce there?
I think the secret sauce is actually finding that one question, that one motivating. What is the one thing you are trying to solve that other people are buying into? So, the simple one of, we want more people to wash their hands because that will actually save a lot of lives. If you have a very simple question, then it's how do we do that? You will find that other people will share that ultimate goal and come along with you. And then what we do is once we have that question that galvanizes people together and that breaks down divides, because you can be from an NGO or you can be from government, but if you all share that vision of that question that you're trying, that issue challenge that you're trying to resolve, it all brings you together and those barriers start to break down. And then if you want to move to action, you just have to make sure that the right people are around the table. So that is where our community comes into itself, because we can find those people that can come around the table and make things happen quickly.
Yeah, and that's so important. It really is. But part of those stakeholders are your employees as well. And we've seen businesses really become more outspoken, not just in how they serve communities, but how they're responding to what's happening in their communities. Is this more specifically during this past year with Black Lives Matter and the murder of Black men and women. We've seen it with the AAPI community. And so companies are taking more of a stand, but that stand also reflects who, their greatest asset, their employees that are working with them day in and day out. And have you seen, a increase in how companies are approaching this? Just where are their communities that they're serving? How are they impacting their employees? How are they really doing that kind of 360 outward and inward view in, where they put their energies? Has that changed at all, or has that always been there, that focus on employees?
I think it's been there, but maybe in a different way. I think they are realizing that employees, both when they decide which company they want to work for and basically retaining those employees, they are looking for more than just, remuneration and doing a job. They are looking for purpose. Why am I doing this job? What's in a sense the greater benefit of this? What's the point of it all? And if companies can give that to people, that's a very big motivator. And I think in order to find that, they're doing more of a listening job. So with India, for example, we know companies who, they've been listening to their employees, and their employees are saying, what can we do? And they've, set up like employee donation schemes where the company then matches whatever donations the employees raise. Little things like that, but they all add up. They all demonstrate that the company is listening to their employees. And I think, particularly millennials, they will very much look at a company before they enter it, and they will expect that company is serious about, doing good and the purpose that they say they have, making sure that they're delivering against it.
What about smaller companies? I've talked to many business owners and leaders quite often who, don't know where to start. Maybe they're smaller, they have less resources, they don't have a dedicated person to lead some of these efforts. Maybe they don't have the financial capacity, but they definitely want to lead a business that has a social impact and that does good. How would a company get started down this path? Is that through your community or other resources?
So everything that we do, everything, about 95% of what we do, we publish and we make public. So there's tons of reports and resources online that I think people can use for inspiration. A lot of it is based on what larger companies have done, but I think there are lessons there for smaller companies. And also in our community, people will find that there's lots of entrepreneurs who are also trying to find their feet. So I would invite people to, connect with one another, to see how they can, jointly maybe or learn from each other, inspire each other. Also our events, they're all public, they're free to join. And we always try to have like a connection zone, a discussion zone. So I would also invite people to come and join those. Our next global summit is going to take place from the 21st to the 25th of June. You can check it out on the website. I would welcome people to come and brainstorm and meet people. There'll also be some free coaching sessions at the end of the day, which this year we're going to focus a little bit about, finding your purpose and what personal skills do you need to do that. And I think as an entrepreneur and having, in a sense, followed that path myself, focusing on you as an individual is as important as, the skills, the policies, the other aspects of business that are more external.
Yeah. We always say it's we world. You start with yourself, and then how do you bring that into your organization and then impact the world?
Indeed.
When 20 years from now, 30 years from now, what do you want to say is your legacy? When you look back at what you've created through Business Fights Poverty, what is that legacy?
I think I would like to look back and think I contributed to the tipping point. And by the tipping point, I feel we're still trying to pull companies and stakeholders to see that business can be this force for good. And the leaders are still sort of at the front of the pack, and not everybody is with them. I want to get to the point where not being a force for good is the exception. And therefore, the majority of society is, really bought into and using and harnessing business as a force for good.
Yeah, and I believe we're going in that direction, whether businesses want to or not. And employees and customers are much more aware of where businesses stand and, their impact positively and negatively. And what has been inspiring to me is some of these enlightened CEOs and leaders who really believe in this and believe in, how business can do better and do good. So it's an honor to have this conversation and to see how you're driving that impact. I would, if I can get a little personal, I'm sure some of our listeners are wondering what it's like to start a company with your partner. How has that process been? Because I can assure you that my partner and I would not be good colleagues.
Yes. Well, for us, it kind of came naturally. The first, we go back 30 years, and the first 6 years of our life, we were either 3 of those years, we were virtually 24 hours a day together. And the other 3 of those years, we were in different countries. So we can very much go from one extreme to the other, which is very useful, I think, in a business where sometimes you're in the thick of it and sometimes you're on your own. I think the secret is that we are very good communicators with one another, and so we can really kind of work through an issue and get to the bottom of it. And I mean, on the plus side, he's my support, and I'm probably his support. But on the downside, it does mean that when you're at home, often the kind of the work life can just take over. I can recall many conversations where the kids have gone to bed and we've continued, talking until like 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to, solve something or come up with a new idea or whatever it might be. So that separation of work and family life, that is hard.
I can imagine. And what has it been like to lead a purpose-driven organization during this past year? I know many of the leaders that I've spoken to, particularly in the B Corp community, are, struggled financially or to get the resources. You talked about some of your research you were doing about founders and access to capital, and that has been an issue for all time, but certainly over the past year has become greater. So I'm sure there was a lot weighing on you as a business leader. And what were some of your takeaways from this past year?
Well, although it's been a difficult year for many people and for us, one thing that it's taught us is that there's always a way around things. We had 4 in-person events lined up last year. Our first one was supposed to be in Washington in April, Oxford in July, New York in September, London in November. We had to cancel all of those and very quickly kind of think about, okay, how can we use the online environment to still bring people together, to still learn, share insights? And actually, there is a silver lining. We are a global community, and often at our events, you only really had the people that could afford the flight and the accommodation. And now that we've gone online, we really are reaching out to the global south and having people from all over the world join our events and sharing their insights, speaking at our events, really learning from it. So that has been the silver lining, and I've been really pleased about that. And, I think the other thing that has been a big kind of learning for us is that we used to do our our challenges as 10-month processes. When COVID hit, we realized we had days. So we actually compressed a 10-month process into a 10-day process. And we've realized that we can be much more efficient and get to the point, in a fraction of the time. And that has also set a new way forward to, in a sense, achieve more during that, times like these. So I think, tough, but there's been good things coming out of it. And we've kept going, and we know, other creative people have also found ways to keep going, and I'm pleased to see that. I think the human race is very resilient.
Yes, I would agree. Well, Yvette, it's been so lovely talking to you today. I'm wondering, do you have any final thoughts you want to leave with our listeners?
As a final thought, I'd just like to say to everybody, if you have it in your heart, think about business. I know some people might be skeptical, but I truly believe business can be such a force for good. And if you want some inspirational stories, come to our website, meet some of our people, come to the Global Summit and see for yourself.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes, give us 5 stars, and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at EllevateNTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.
Ever wonder what separates cloud innovators? Find out. Download the Deloitte US Future of Cloud Survey Report, closing the cloud strategy, technology, and innovation gap at Deloitte.com/US/cloud survey. Deloitte.